Hello everyone to the next network security lecture. So the last time we have been talking about symmetric encryption, asymmetric encryption, Diffie-Hellman, and at the end we also started to talk about certificates. So this time I would like to recapitulate on certificates and basically to summarize also that in slides. So the last one was just a drawing, and then we will go to the topic of network securing networks via firewalls and so on. So, but let's first at first talk about certificates and how to authenticate. These are basic building blocks that we will use all the time later on. So therefore, it's quite important to have a common measure of what kind of tools we can use. Okay, so let's get started. So first, looking at the options that we have in the network. So basically what you have to imagine is that we have Alice and Bob again trying to communicate, but here's some kind of wall, so they do not see each other. So this is concealed, and in between there might be, I don't know, Trudy as a potential attacker. So is it sufficient that Alice tells that she's Alice? Would that work out? So always to keep in mind, if we have this kind of setup where we don't know whether A is directly connected to B or to somebody else, or whether let's keep it from B's perspective. If there are different possibilities to whom B is communicating, so can we distinguish from the claim I am Alice that really Alice is here telling B that she's Alice? Obviously not. It can also be an attacker, it can also be a man in the middle. We don't have that guarantee. So that's too simple. We need a better approach. Step number 2, what Alice could do is to see, okay, this is my IP address, and I'm claiming I'm Alice. Again, keep in mind, what if an attacker does this, and what if Alice maybe confirms this to Trudy and Trudy forwards it. So these options we have. Is this sufficient? Obviously not. We also talked about the situation that everybody can spoof Alice address. So basically to claim to be Alice, to send a packet with the source IP address of Alice, but the originator is Trudy or the attacker. So that's also not sufficient. In regular networks, this is not enough. Okay. What's with this approach? So let's say there's some kind of, Bob has some kind of hidden knowledge. So he knows Alice has a specific password, and only the person providing that password is really Alice, because this is a way to show through knowledge that the identity is verified. And let's see, the confirmation will then go to Alice. Again, we think of the case, what happens if somebody else is sending that message to Bob, or if this scenario happens. And obviously, as we have said already, the IP address is not secured, so everybody can claim to send an IP address, IP packet from Alice. And especially this case with a recording and a replay attack will be able to break the system. So it's also not sufficient to tell that she's Alice and send her some secret, because that secret will then be no secret anymore, obviously. Okay. Next option. What can we do? So playback attacks, replay attacks. This is not a viable way. So we somehow have a modification now this time. Now we don't expose our password. So basically, let's say here's some kind of database, and here's just some encrypted password, or there's some way to decrypt it. So it might also be encrypted for B, and B can then, using his public-private key pair, decrypt the message. Is this sufficient? No, it's the same. Actually, I mean, that's the same replay attack. There's no difference for Trudy to change her behavior. So everything works as before. So this is a man-in-the-middle attack, basically taking the credentials and the information that Alice sends and sending it out as her own, and basically gaining the benefits because this is the communication partner. So this is also not working. Okay, let's see the next. So we want to avoid playback attacks, and here we learn the term nonce, number used only once. Yeah, number used only once in a lifetime. So basically a very special number. So we have to prove that Alice is live, because that was the problem here with the replay attack. Basically this answer goes to Alice's IP address, and that goes there, and basically Trudy does not get the reply. Yeah, so Trudy here doesn't get the reply, the attacker doesn't get the reply from Bob, but still she might have caused some error. So what if we check whether Alice is alive? So what Bob does is to send Alice a nonce, R, and Alice must return R encrypted with a shared secret key. Okay, this is already better, because Bob needs a secret key, the secret key AB, and Alice needs that secret key AB. So this is something that only the two of them have. So anybody who can basically encrypt R with the correct key proves that the person is A, so Alice. I'm Alice. Now the R comes back, and here obviously this is from the source of the IP address, source IP address of A, and the destination IP address is here also A. So only Alice gets it. Yeah, right. And then this is then encrypted with the key between the two parties, A and so the key associated to Alice and Bob. What can happen now? Again, we have to imagine that we have this scenario: Alice, Trudy, and Bob. Let's see whether this works out. So what might happen here is, yeah, let's say Trudy is here in the middle. So, and what Trudy does, she replaces the IP address that the message came from with her own. Then this will become destination IPT, and Trudy, the attacker, replaces it again with the destination. So this is not secured. And now the message is encrypted, that's fine. So it's just passed on here to Bob. So what Bob knows, Alice is alive, that's right, but he doesn't know that he's communicating to Trudy, who's the man in the middle. So also not ideal. Okay, let's try it differently. Okay, so this time we had also one problem in this case, which was basically that they both needed a private and it needed a shared secret key, which is difficult to exchange. So let's have a look how we can use it without a secret shared key. So something that is public. And here we use the public key cryptography, and we will look into how to authenticate Alice or Bob to the other party. So let's say I'm Alice, this is R, and now Alice encrypts it, so basically signs the message R, the number used once, with her private key. And now Bob asks, okay, send me your public key so that I can verify it. And yes, this is my public key, which I now encrypt. So that Bob can compute that I have both of these together. Actually, there might be some mistake here. I mean, this should not be sent. So in order, this is the first thing that was sent, the signature, and this is the public key that was used. So without this R. So let's take that directly out. No. So this is the right one. Is this now working? Where's the flaw? Again, let's have a look whether this is a Trudy. I don't know. So somebody's claiming she's Alice. We get a nonce. We sign it with a number with our private key, and we send a public key for Alice. That was asked, but we send the public key of Trudy. How can Bob identify whether this is really Alice or Trudy's public key? So the only connection which tells which public key belongs to whom is by the potential attacker. So this is also not working. And we have a different other problem. Basically, this is also a little bit problematic. If we sign something that somebody else sent to us, do we know what is inside? Is it valuable to that person? Is it valuable to put some signature inside? So this is also not ideal. So if we have this kind of man in the middle or woman in the middle attack, then basically what can happen is Alice wants to claim she's Alice, but Trudy intercepts this, puts her key inside, and now has a secured connection to Bob. And now Trudy repeats the same process and has now a secure connection to Alice. And both of Alice and Bob think they are communicating to each other, but in fact they are communicating to Trudy, the attacker. And any message that is now sent using the public key, basically that was associated, so Bob learned Alice is associated to this public key. And Bob, Alice is also fine. So basically Bob learned this. So everything that Bob is now sending in secret to Alice is encrypted to Trudy. And Trudy can depict it, can unencrypt it, decrypt it, and basically read the messages and pass it then on to Alice. So this is a man in the middle attack. So what mistake do we make here? And as we see, this is the mistake, that you think that the public key of Trudy is that of Alice. So we cannot trust that the communication partner that we are communicating to is validly communicating and sending us their valid public key. So what should we do? And here is what we talked about last time. So we need some kind of signatures. Basically, what is a handwritten signature? If somebody signs a document, that means he is the owner or creator. And it should be verifiable, non-forgeable. So basically the recipient can prove to someone that Bob and no one else, including Alice, must have signed a document. So especially the recipient should not be allowed to fake the signature. How is this done in public key cryptography? So basically you have a message, dear Alice, sent by Bob. Then you encrypted Bob's private key, and this is only available at Bob. And at the other side, so what you get is the message itself. So what is Bob sending? Bob is sending his message, and this K minus so the private key of himself used to encrypt with the private key the message. So encrypting with the private key is a signature. So this, and this is M. So, and what Alice can now do is basically to take the public key that should be public and known it is associated to Bob, and basically encrypt basically apply the encryption algorithm to the signed document. And as you know, what happens, so if this is the signed document, so basically it was encrypted with the exponent d mod n, and if we encrypt it again, that means this is to the power of e, and this will result in m d times e mod n, and this has been selected in order to become exactly one mod n. So basically we get our message back, and if we get the message back, then we can compare it to what we got, and if it's correct, then we know, okay, in this process Bob's private key has been used. Because the private key is private, only Bob has it, that must be Bob. So what did we verify? In this case, Bob signed M, no one else signed M, and it was M signed and nothing else. So this was no fake. But yes, and there's a non-repudiation because there's some confirmation. So the signature really proves that only the person having the Bob's private key is able to create a signature. So now the big question. The big question now that will be is it Bob's private key? So how is it verified that K minus B is really Bob's private key? And the same, equally the same, is how does this belong? So who verifies that this belongs to Bob? This will be the big question. But we see also, this is question number 1, and question number 2 is just looking at the sizes that we have here. We have send M and K minus, so the private key, encrypting the message. But what does this mean? What does this mean when we have this kind of computation? So what typically is done, just to show you how we can use a public encryption scheme to encrypt large messages, is basically you have a very large message. And what you do is you take blocks out of this message and you encrypt these blocks with these individual parts. So basically it is known what the path, the block length is, and what you get is that the size in bits is roughly the same once encrypted. So if this is 1 gigabyte large, this is also 1 gigabyte large, and this is a little bit problematic because obviously, as you see, if we transfer both, we just transfer lots of data. So can we reduce this? So smaller size, that's the question. And one approach that we also learned last time is the message digest, or so-called hash. That's the hidden Bermuda triangle. So that's the hash. So what does it do? So it's not reasonable, it's expensive to encrypt long messages. What we do is to basically have a fixed length, easy to compute fingerprint. A fingerprint is something which allows us to easily compute, let's say this is 1 gigabyte. This should be only 160 bit. It should be easy this way, but impossible this way. So given that you have a hash, you cannot reconstruct what message it came from. If that would be possible, our approach would not work out. So basically we want to encrypt. We will see. I mean, this is a so-called trapdoor function, which really is only accessible in one direction. So it can every input results in a fixed size output. Let's say 160 bit or 265 bit. So this is depending on which hash function we use, but it's always the same size. Even if let's say our input is 2 bits large, we get the 160 bit output. If it's 2 terabyte large, we still get the 160 bit output. So it has a fixed size. This is quite important. And because this can be thought of as a fingerprint or a representation, sometimes it's also an analogous, it can be used in the signature as a replacement for the original. And obviously there are many to one. I mean, in this 1 gigabyte, just think of all the possible files of 1 gigabyte. There are so many through the wild bit combinations. So this is how many bits do we have there? We have 10 to the 2 to the power of 30 bits, and obviously these are more than you can compute with 160 bits. But so many to one mapping, but still it is impossible to. It's not. Sorry, just to make a correction. It is nearly impossible to find another input with the same 160 bits. So what you actually would have to do is you would have to test so many inputs, and basically it's all statistics how many you have to try until you find something that is equally matching the same hash bits. So given a message digest is x, it should be computationally infeasible, so it should take so much time that it's not realistic to find another m such that they match. So basically for a given x, so let's say you know that this has been signed, let's say from Bob, then you should not be able to find another message which results in the same for which counts that it results in the same hash. We will see why. So how are hashes used? Basically what is done, you take the large message, you hash it. So this is 1 gigabyte, this is 160 bit. We encrypt with Bob's private key this 160 bit only, and this is only 160 bit again. So this is very small, and we add our message, which is 1 gigabyte, and we send both. So we send m, and we send the hash encrypted by Bob's private key. So in total it's not 2 gigabytes now, but it's only roughly 1 gigabyte. Okay, on the other side, what happens? So Alice takes the message, so here's m and here's kb minus m. It is encrypted, so this is what we got. We encrypt it with Bob's public key. This is the big challenge. This is challenge number 1 on the last time. I mean, here on the slide we noted down 2 questions, how to make it smaller. This is basically through the hash. And now we assume that we know Bob's public key. So we take Bob's public key, and by combining these two together, as a result we get the hash of the message. So Bob and Alice then takes the message, it hashes it, here we have some hash, and then we compare it, and if they're equal, then basically we verified that this message that you received has been really created by Bob's private key, which is only associated to Bob. This is the big challenge. So how? So there are some examples for hash functions such as MD5, 128 bits. There's SHA-1. I don't know, I seem to get other Bermuda triangles as well. So 160 bits. There are also SHA-3 is in discussion. SHA-2 has been once proposed, but there have been found some issues. Basically, there are different options that can be used. So SHA-1 is typically quite okay still. So what can we do? So what is the situation now? If Alice tells she's Alice, and now basically I just make it short, that we still have the issue. We have to associate this problem. So how do we know what is the public key of Alice? This is a big question that we still have, and this is where the certificates come in. Let's have a look at certificates again. So basically what we want to have is to have a verified institute, such as just to take the example of why is your passport valid, because the state certified that it's valid, and they checked whether you individually are allowed, basically are the person who you claim to be, and the passport has been handed out and created especially for you. So somebody verified your identity, and we need the same also for public keys. So basically what we need is some institute to verify that you are the person who claims to be. So this is a certificate authority. Sorry. Yeah. So this is really somebody that we trust, and what it needs to bind is Bob's identity information to really say this is Bob and Bob's public key together. Obviously, Bob has to also verify to that certification authority and that he is in the possession of the corresponding private key. So how do we create this bond? Bob needs to prove Bob proves that he has the private key. Sorry. So this is what Bob has to verify to the certificate authority, and then the certificate authority, with its own private key, signs a document in which it's stated this public key is belonging to Bob, and this we call certificate. So it basically binds the entity E to E's public key. And why do we trust it? Because now this document, the certificate, Bob can show around to everyone. Hello, look, this is me. This is my public key. You can trust. When I give you out my public key, you can trust it because this institute verified that we are together and that we are connected. So when Alice wants Bob's public key, basically Alice does not ask Bob anymore for his public key, but gets Bob's certificate from the certification authority, let's say. I mean, in real life there's some repositories for that, and everybody can set it up. It's public because this is something that everybody can share. So the combination of the public key and that it belongs to Bob. Okay, we will talk about why we trust this. So basically, this certificate can be verified by Alice by basically checking whether the signature of the certificate, the signature by the certification authority is correct. So we have to trust that the certification authority has this public key. So we need another certification authority that verifies basically the signature, the binding of the certification authority and its public key. We will see where this chain ends. So it's basically a chain. But let's say we're at this point, we have the verification that Bob's public key is this specific public key that we got. Now we can see how this influences our communication. Let's get back. Where are the slides? No. So let's get back to this point. So at this point, let's assume we have the same situation. So Alice claims she's Alice. Okay, this is now possible. Bob sends R. And let's say this is also possible, but this is now replaced by the point that Bob asks the certification authority or the repository for public keys, and he gets the public key of a real Alice. So this has been verified by the certificate. So now that we have this verified Alice, so this is not anymore happening, and if Trudy sends this, then Bob can verify that this is wrong. So Trudy cannot anymore interfere. So basically now Bob only accepts messages signed by Alice, and therefore this attack is not anymore possible. So what we have now is that really Alice has to communicate. So she sends her signature. This is not anymore asked. This is not anymore provided. And now any message to Alice can be already encrypted. So this is already using the public key of Alice in order to send the encrypted messages. So basically what happened now is that Bob knows that this is Alice. Alice does not know who Bob is. Bob did not in this example verify himself. It's not authenticated, but Alice is authenticated. Okay, let's have a look at what a real certificate looks like. And here I have an example just from my browser. Let me just see whether I can give you a better example. So let's open Graffi.de, and where you find the certificate information. So let's open this log. It is safe. Let's switch to English. Okay. So again, let's go to the link. It is, we look for more information. This is how it looks like. I visited quite often. So view certificate, and there we see, okay, this subject name. So in this case, the domain has been verified. So if I'm communicating in secret with this, so basically authenticated to this domain, it is verified that the domain is associated to the public key that I know. Who's the issuer? This is the issuer name. It has a validity. There are alternative names, that's fine, but this is the public key. So basically this public key is associated to the subject name. So to the subject, to the domain. Here's the RSA, it is RSA used. This is the key size. This is the exponent. So actually this is E in our calculations, and N is this. Quite some large number. So it's 4069 bits large. There's some other information, some serial number by the issuer, that's fine. It is telling me also that it uses a signature algorithm, a SHA-265, this is the hash. And RSI is used for signatures. Basically, the certificate signed this certificate file with its RSR key. There's some fingerprints. Basically, this is a of the public key. This is the the hash. There's also SHA-1, 160 bits. Some constraints. Basically, this is I will show it to you on the next slide. It's optional what this key can be used for, our public key. Extended use cases, so basically server authentication, client authentication, some key ID, authority key ID, so where these keys can be looked up, so basically where the certificate is listed. And this is also maybe interesting, so it tells who is the certificate authority issuer. So we have here the issuer, so that's basically who has created that certificate. Where is it? Here, let's encrypt. And common name is R3. And here you can find more information on that. There's some policies, some other information. So basically, let's look at this slide. Where do we have it? Yes. So we have a subject name, that's important. We have an issuer name, let's encrypt here. Validity period is also there. Then we have the exponent and the modulus. Then we have the serial number of the certificate of the issuer, signature algorithm, and what is not what was not visible previously is the signature itself. So all the 4069 bits created by the certificate authority through encrypting this certificate with its own private key. So, and some other non-essential parts, but which are also listed here. So, and you might ask, okay, but now we have to trust Let's Encrypt. How do we know whether Let's Encrypt is trusted? And so, why do we trust Let's Encrypt that it's a valid certification authority? So this Let's Encrypt by R3, also named, has created a certificate. Why do we trust R3? So first of all, we need to verify whether the signature is okay. So we need to get the public key of the certification authority, R3. So we look into it, and yes, here we have also the subject name, R3 subject, Let's Encrypt. It has also some modulus, also some exponent, very similar, I mean the same structure. So why do we trust this organization? Because it has been, its certificate has been signed by the Internet Security Research Group. And this is the certificate of it. And the Internet Security Research Group signed its own certificate. So this is where the chain ends. And now you might ask, so why do we trust this group? So the simple answer is because Firefox trusts this organization. Firefox put this root certificate basically in our browser, so that every certificate that has a chain leading to this Internet Security Research Group is trusted. Basically, the browser creator maintains the root of trust. Okay, let's summarize. What did we learn? So we learned basic techniques on encryption, message integrity, endpoint authentication. So especially how to use signatures, what are hashes, what is asymmetric, symmetric encryption, Diffie-Hellman, and this is a toolbox really used in so many cases. So this is important to know. Okay, so far for this topic. Now we switch to another topic. Yes. So, and now we are looking into basically securing networks and looking in how we can what we can apply from our next network knowledge, what networks do we have, and what threats are existing there. Sorry. So we want to now we connect it a little bit. So let's say the last time I also asked how far you are in the networking knowledge, and you said that's all well known. So what you're looking now into is to see what architecture secure networks have, what potential issues might there be, and how are such architectures built off, what components do they have, and how do we approach this. First looking at the problems that we have, so especially at an example. Then we look at various components, and then we look at basically the question how to build such a secure network. Okay, so let's assume we are following setup. We have a medium-sized company. There are 3 departments. There's especially human resources, product development, and sales. And they have an web server and email server. And the employees in product development have home office and frequently work from home. Especially they want to access the web server. Yes, everybody should access that, and the email server as well. Employees are often at the customer side and then need access to internal data. So we have to think of what kind of elements do we have. Let's see, what challenges do we face. So what we want is that we want to protect the internal network from unauthorized access from the internet. So especially if you have some kind of database internally and there's the internet, then you don't want anybody to be able to access your database internally. But you want to have the employees to access it. So this should not be possible, but the employees should be able to access it. There should be the detection and notification of attack attempts. We want to separate sensitive systems from publicly accessible systems, so there should be some kind of wall here, but here it should be okay. We also want to separate the departments from each other. Yeah. So especially human resources has data that should not be accessed by product development. Product development should not be accessed by sales, so they should operate individually. And there should not be unencrypted data transferred over insecure networks. Yeah, and how's the typical approach there? So we have to face basically a trade-off. So security is always about trade-offs, and it's all about what risk we are willing to take, because every security measure, yeah, might cost a lot of money. So measure, okay, that might cost a lot of money, and the threat or the risk. So if there's some kind of potential damage that can be caused by an attacker times the probability of it to happen, this is what we call risk. So if the damage might be, I don't know, it's very expensive. Yeah, let's give a simple example, but the probability is only very small. Yeah, then maybe the risk is the potential averaged and expected risk is basically a number. It's a currency. It's a value. It's money. How much money do you expect to impact you? So how much will you lose through this attack option, through this attack risk still open? And typically the thought is, if the threat is not important and you in average might lose a little bit money, but it would be very expensive to counteract, then you accept the risk. And if the probability or the damage is very high, then you typically invest the security measure. So let's have a look. So what further objectives do we have? What can happen now? But so basically we laid out our use case, but what we do not look into now is dealing with attacks from organizations, fail safety. What if several or one component breaks in our setup? Virus scanners, hardware theft, user friendliness, updates, security information, emergency plans. If something happens, what should be done? So this we also ignore now. And policies with regard to updates and that you are not allowed to have your own software or hardware. That might also deal and come with potential risks. So let's have a look. Unfortunately we don't are now live together, so therefore I will jump over it. But what you should probably do, pause the video, think of it how to build an architecture for this setup. So you have human resources, product development and sales. You have people in the product development working in home office and frequently, so basically, and the sales, so this is the sales, are the customer side and need access to internal data. So how should this be set up? So one approach is to introduce elements such as a firewall or intrusion detection system. This is the terms that we will learn now, what these are. So as you can see, the firewalls and the intrusion detection systems are basically have different kind of purposes. So firewall is typically connecting several networks, which, let's say, at least two. So it typically has some it has several sites. You can connect several sites to it, and this acts basically as a filter. So to allow or to stop traffic going through it based on specific patterns. Then we have the intrusion detection systems, which have the task to monitor the traffic and come to conclusion and come to actions based on that. So it's not blocking. It is not filtering traffic too much. It's really about observing the traffic, maybe at different positions in the network, and identifying potential threats in the traffic. And there we have some zones. So the green zone here, for example, should be internal. Then we have some demilitarized zones. So basically the green nodes should never be accessed from outside. Yeah. Then we have some demilitarized zone where access from outside is permitted. So especially to the web servers, people should be able to visit the website or the email server to send an email to this company. And but this is also not exposed directly to the internet. There's another kind of firewall which protects it and acts again as a filter. So let's have a look what this means. So what are firewalls, what are intrusion detections, and what is a virtual private network? Okay, so first of all, the definition of the term firewall. So a firewall is basically separating two areas of a network, and it acts as a filter in between. So some things are allowed through, some not, and it is as a filter. So it's not letting anything through. So if it's basically full, the filter filters everything that's not desired, and letting everything through is also not desired, because then you would allow malicious attack traffic through it. So you want to filter correctly. Yeah, and this filtering can happen at various layers. As we have seen in the summary, we have different layers. We have the network layer, basically with IP. We have the transport layer with TCP/UDP, and we have the application layer, such as web traffic, so HTTP also. So, and they have sometimes different kind of terminology. So the application layer, this is typically called proxy or application layer firewall gateway. Then at the transport layer it's called SOX proxy, and at the network this is the real firewall typically. So we will look at these different layers and what kind of firewall we can have. So first, starting with the application layer proxies. And the idea is that the client sends now a packet, let's say using HTTP, to an application layer proxy gateway. This proxy is a filter for HTTP traffic. So it looks dedicatedly into the HTTP traffic, what has been queried, and passes on a slightly different HTTP request. And now the answer comes. Yeah, this is now the status code 200. So this is then the answer. Also, this is filtered and modified potentially by the gateway. So this is for the application layer protocol, must be supported by the client program. Why is that? This is because typically the IP address of the server, this is the web server, and this is, I don't know, proxy 01. So this is one internal IP address. And instead of sending the HTTP request to the web server, it is sent to the proxy. So you have to configure your client that even though you visited google.com and your DNS request resolved google.com to a specific IP address, you still send that HTTP request to the proxy. So this is what you have to configure in your client program. So instead of connecting to the server, you connect directly to the proxy and tell it to which server to forward this HTTP request to. And the proxy then passes the data through if it matches, basically if it's allowed, and so checks if allowed and potential changes. Okay, so in this especially will be part of the next lab exercise, where we have a look into this kind of HTTP traffic, how this looks like, and we will look also into application layer proxies. So what can the application layer proxy do? So what it does is it understands the application layer protocol. So let's say it is an application layer gateway for HTTP. So it knows the protocol by heart and very detailed, and can apply some filters either to block the traffic or to modify the request. So for example, you can block all the download of JPEG images, or something that is executable. That should be also allowed, disallowed, so prohibited. Or anything, executable, or something with a known virus name or so. So what we will to give, so even deep stream manipulation possible. That means, let's say, if you have a regular, if you have a regular HTTP call, so you open the browser, you type in the web page, DNS request is sent, DNS answer comes, and now you know to which web server to connect to, and then if you state the HTTP request, the message does not just contain which file you wanted, which website you want to visit, but it also tells maybe your region, your preferred language, your screen resolution, so that that the user interface can adapt to potentially a mobile screen. So there's also additional information, and let's say this is what manipulation can do. For example, really change everything in the HTTP traffic. So for example, which resolution you have, which language you have, which country you are, that can be removed or modified. One example is Prevoxy. So this is can clean the requested pages of advertisement before passing them to the client. We will look in the lab exercise into Squid, which can cache data. So basically, if there are further requests on this website, it's delivering it directly. And also the similar features, of course, it filters. You can modify files, and that we will have a look at in the lab. Okay, so far for the application layer proxies. You can also have a transport layer proxy. This is the idea that it applies for TCP and UDP. Yeah, and the idea is, if you have let's say this is your application HTTP, it wants to send a message, it uses TCP to basically to have reliable data transfer, also a large distance, and data is more important than real time. So TCP, getting every bit correct, is the way to go. Okay, but this proxy, now what it does is you do not communicate directly to the TCP protocol, but you communicate to this secured, so basically this proxy layer implementation, and this proxy layer implementation then itself communicates to TCP. So this is the proxy part. So basically the client's connected to the proxy. It can authenticate itself. You can tell who you want to talk to, so basically where on the other side it should connect to. The proxy establishes the connection, and once it's open, then you can pass any data from the client to that server, and basically supports you in that. Okay. So, what else did we had? We had transport layer proxies, we had application layer proxies. Yes, the network layer. So basically, what is the information at the network layer? So this is the hourglass model of the internet, something like this. IP is in the middle. Here we have some link layer, so basically Wi-Fi, twisted pair cable, fiber optics. Then we have basically TCP or UDP, and then all the rest. So, and what information do we have at this specific packet layer? So obviously we have information on the IP address, on source and destination. What else do we have? So in that message, this kind of header of the link layer is already vanished. We know at which point in a message the communication should be passed on. So it should be TCP or UDP. So we also know the TCP UDP setup, especially we know which ports they are, both source and destination, both yeah, basically we know that. So what we have is the IP address, source and destination, and port, source and destination to base our filters on. So packet filters work on the network and transport layer. So we have the port, source port and destination port, and the IP address and source and destination form. So you have to really think every packet comes along and has to pass through this firewall. And now every rule is applied to this packet, and if one of them breaks, basically and tells the packets should be thrown away, then it is thrown away. Yeah, so first it fits, it checks whether it fits all whether it fits one requirement in the filter that allows it to pass. So, and if or to drop it immediately. So it compares IP addresses, port numbers, sequence numbers, flags, everything what we have in at bay in the IP header information, plus TCP or UDP. This is actually also in the IP header, because we have the next protocol field, basically telling if the message has been correctly perceived by this host that is addressed here. Then we need to know which network information we have to further it on to TCP or UDP. Okay, and yeah, if the rule matches, then action will be executed either to accept the message or typically to throw the message away, so it's not allowed to enter our precious network. So here's an example how this might look like. So what you can see, we have a firewall between the internet, and the internal network. Yeah, so it separates both of them. So because we want to make sure that only traffic coming from inside is allowed to go out, but coming from outside, there we don't really need or want that too much. So we'll see, I mean, blocking it in general, the communication from the outside, this is already protecting us against many potential attackers. But in our case, if we want to allow the internal network to communicate outside, basically we have to define different rules, what the internal nodes are allowed to do and what the external nodes, basically the internet, is allowed to do. So let's say we want to, here's the mail server. I mean, in our example it also has some kind of other server, web server, but let's say we just have the mail server. So what we want to do is to allow traffic in this direction and traffic to the other direction. That should be allowed if it accesses the mail server, but if it wants to access this internal machine, then the message should be rejected. Okay, so now again here, what would in your scenario this 8000, in what would you in your setup, in your scenario, define as kind of rules? We have these addresses, mail server is available at port 80. So what should be the rules that is defining what networks traffic is allowed and what not? So pause the video for 5 minutes, think about it, and then we look into to the options. Okay, let's let's talk quickly about simple mail transfer protocol. So this is how emails are exchanged. Port 50 is typically the standard port for it, so the historically associated port for the SMTP protocol. Also how it's standardized. So if the mail is then transmitted over this port, from the outside, on this port addressing exactly the mail server, that should be allowed. So the mail should be able to pass through incoming TCP connection from outside the port 25 of the mail server, and outgoing TCP connections from the mail server port is not so important in this case to port 25 on other machines, so that we can make sure that every time we can receive the correct data and we can send it also ourselves. Okay. So let's see, for our example, what rules we should apply. So first of all, what we want to define is that traffic from the mail server to the mail server should be permitted in case, so and, these are TCP packets, and they come from or go to port 25. That means if let me just go back. So what IP address did we had? So we had the IP address ending with 10. So we have this source IP address ending with 10. This is our web server. So it is our web server, and it's sending out HTTP message to the outside world that should pass. If the goal is our mail server and the sender is using 25 as a port, that should be also accepted. Again, this is if it's our web server and here it's addressed, and the port number on the machine is addressed, then it's also fine. And if the source is in this case also a mail server and using this source port, then should also go through. Otherwise, it should be discarded. So basically, by this we can simply specify the rules by which we want to accept messages and or to block it. How is this kind of rules implemented? So let's talk about 3 levels of abstraction. So in our example, if we define the rules in this words, this is a high level description of what the firewall should be able to do. Then a more fine granular description of the rules, and now matching it to, let's say, a real implementation, such as in Linux. There we can use IP tables. So the idea is that this is strongly embedded. This firewall rule is embedded deeply at the Linux level, so-called IP tables framework, and there are different options how to use it. So either as framework or within the router using Linux. It's very powerful because what you also can specify. So as a router, so if we use the machine as a router, that means it has various connections. Then we can still address all individual. So let's say this goes over link A, link B, and so on. So we can specify for which different outputs, for which different connections we want which specific rules to apply. It's very powerful, and we will also take a closer look at that. So at first we could get the rough first view, but in practical lab we will also go deeper down. Okay, how you can think of it is there's a table, basically. IP tables manages some tables, and one is about forwarding. Yeah, this is about which incoming messages should we forwarded. Yeah, and this is our table that we have for it. Basically, here we can specify the filters that should be applied. Yeah, main purpose typically is that you have a classic firewall in the filter table described, and but there can be also other, such as NAT, so network address translation, where you can specify further requirements and formulas, basically when to filter traffic. Okay, how is this working? So as I've quickly noted out, we have this kind of table structure, and what can you specify? First of all, you specify where packages come from and where they go. Yeah, this plays also a role. Basically to identify what is coming from inside to the outside world and from the outside world to the inside world, and what of that needs to be forwarded. Okay, good. Let's have a quick look at how this looks like in real. How is an IP table rule set up? So, as again, every table consists of a set of rules. Yeah, and how is this rule set up? There must be only one met. Basically, only one needs to be met for the rule to become active, both in a positive and negative side. So typically, it's that there are many commands, many rules, and if one of them passes, that's good. But if no rule passes, so basically it starts from above, from top down, and goes until the last rule to check whether there's a rule listed that we match, and that gets the ability to, that the contact is sent through. So if we don't find anything that matches, then basically there's a default case which tells it should be rejected. Okay, let's have a look at how such a filter line might look like. So IP tables, T filter, so it should operate in the filter part. If the message is from this destination and it is using as a protocol TCP and the destination port is 25, then it should be accepted. Okay. Some further examples. So what you can specify. So basically, once again, what you want is to create a table. So it can be created, can be deleted, modified, displayed, and so on with IP tables. What you want to do is to recreate from scratch a new set of rules that should be applied, and what information can be used, such as the source and destination IP address. Yeah, but you can specify it. You can also specify ranges, especially if it's from ranger that you had contact to. So specifically that you describe a subnet that is addressed, or a subnet that is where the message is generating from. Then incoming outgoing interface, as I said, in a router you typically have different in and out, and you want to be able to distinguish them to make the computation easier. So you can also refer to the interface, incoming outgoing interface. Then every packet and the network layer not just has this message itself, but it is also, let's say, if IP finished its task, the message arrived at the host that was it addressed to, and now we look into the header and see, okay, this message is now for TCP meant or for UDP. So the next protocol that is also listed, that we can take a different, let it join our understanding of how the rules are applied. So that can be also a filter point. And then we have the source port and the destination port, which we can also specify. And with these small combinations, we can do quite a lot. Lots of filters that we can create. Okay, so and now if the filter matches, so the specific current line that we specified here comes to a match, then the potential actions related to it is either to drop the packet, to accept it, so to let it pass on, or to log it, but and then continue through processing. So it's not just black and white what options there are, but we can also do a little bit more as a reaction to a valid check. Okay, let's finally see some nice example. So what we'd first do is to say we want to flush the forwarding table, so there should be no new installed. And every time, so now the next rule, so if an IP mess, so if a general rule should be drop packet if no rule matches. Okay, and then we specify the 4 examples. Once again, what we wanted to do is there's a firewall, and there's a server with ending on 10, and listening on port 25. And let's say on the same firewall here's a problematic node that should not be able to be accessed from outside, such that it contains I don't know, confidential information. But our web server using this IP address should be accessible. So one of the rules is if the destination is our web server and we are sending the message to 25, so on the mail server, then that should be fine. Also, it is written if the message comes from the source, from the device, from the SMTP server, in this case we're listening on port 25. So this last line means the message comes from a mail server, and this means it has been addressed, and the port is also correct, or it has been addressed, but the message was sent from port 25. That's a little bit problematic. Or that our SMTP server is sending out messages. So what you might have also noticed that yes, destination should be the selected mail server, but you have to store one long. So you have to allow also incoming messages which are from we just have port number 25. So if there's here some bad guy and wants to access your private database, what it can do is basically to select as a source port 25 and address any malicious node in your network. So you have to take care that your rules are really correct. So really think about it. What does this rule mean? And how to complete it to a desired state. Okay. Let's look again at this example from earlier. Our internal what we have. So basically previously we specified the firewall rules that everything coming from the mail server, so basically this part, source and the mail server, and sending out messages from port 25 or sending it to port 25, it is accepted in the network. And the second was that the destination should be our web server, and depending on from which port the message was sent, it is accepted as well. So if it matches port number 25. So the experience is basically if here's some server using port 25, a source port, this is still somehow an issue. So the rules are not correct. Please check and think of what other rules you need. But now we want to address the different problems. Basically, now we want also to let these nodes get into the internet, so send messages out and get the replies. So how can we allow to establish an arbitrary connection to the internet? Let's see. So as we see, one of the problems with this very generic setup is that typically we want, especially if there are messages incoming from outside to our web server, the connection to our web server should be protected. So especially coming from arbitrary source and destination ports to the internal clients, that should be problematic. So we have to make sure that the traffic into our network should not be permitted simply by the case for which source port the message is sent. So this is the bug that I was talking about. Yeah, we have basically following problem. What you want to do is to also allow communication only after it has been established once from an internal node. Okay, let's talk about the case. So let's say we talk about our internal web server. The internal web server has a property that's accessed from outside, and connects to the and is able to respond. So let's now turn the case. So let's say here is a web server and internet. Here's a web server and internet. The internet connects to our firewall, and then we have here an internal machine. Yeah, and this internal machine should not be accessible from outside. But obviously, if we state the lookup to website A, then we want simply to get the answer to the internal node as well. So it should just work as expected. So the problem is, if we allow the response coming from any web server outside, then we need to specify that connecting it from outside is okay. Basically, in order to be able to receive the answer. And here we face some kind of final dilemma with stateless firewalls. So typically the problem is, let's say we send a message out. One moment. So let's say we have a regular stateless firewall. Let's make it this way. Here we have a browser, and we have an IP address A, and let's say source address, I don't know, X. And now we use our browser to send out a message, and this is the web server at IP address B and port Y. What rule should apply to accept the response? So we cannot make it based on which of the internal machines sent the message, because any of them should be eligible to starting connections to the outside world and getting responses. So we cannot filter based on these two informations. Then the answers from any potential web server that has been accessed should be answered. So should be the answer should be led through the filter of our firewall. So that would mean that we will have to accept any kind of answer from outside, because it might be a potential answer from a web server, and this is overall problematic. So here the solution is to allow the tracking of the state of messages. And especially in stateful firewalls, we remember that, let's say, if this is a web server and this is internal and here's firewall, it remembers that it has internally started a new communication to the outside world, and now the next step would be to allow the response, but only the response. That's the key point. So basically it allows valid responses to timely requests. So it's really part of the traffic and for the two communication traffic, and that separates basically which senders from the outside should be accepted and which not. So, and now what we assign is for each rule a state value, such as that a SYN has been sent in the handshake for establishing TCP connections. So we are half open, then that it is open on both sides, or that we don't have any connection at all. Yeah, and if you can basically express there what kind of responses should be acceptable to pass to the internal network. Okay, so what, again, to have this example, what we want to do is messages to the outside world as a web server should be accessible, and the answers should be also permitted, but not attacker accessing maybe the same machine or other machines in the network. So we must basically introduce some kind of state to first check whether some internal node has established a connection to the outside that waits for a valid response, or to identify, if not, so if we did not start from internally, new TCP connection, and of course the message from outside to the inside should not be allowed. Okay, so again, in the lecture you would have some time now to test it. The two options, in which situation we want to define special rules. So we extend the terminology a little bit, and just first of all in pseudocode think of what kind of approaches do you see. So how should we define the rules? Okay, as we don't have the lecture in presence, I have to skip a little bit through this. So please still do it and consider coming to all lectures. So let's dig into. So we cannot do the test live, so therefore, or this exchange. So let's look into the results. So what we want to do is to allow any packets from inside to the outside. Yeah. Then everything from the outside belonging, this is the key word, to an existing connection, and also packets from outside going to port 25 in addition, which have not been previously contacted to, as this is our mail server. So incoming messages should be accepted. So what new rules do we have to extend our commands in IP tables? So first, that we introduce a state, and this can be with the parameter m, where a state can have different basically configurations. The first is a state established, so this is for ongoing open connections that have been confirmed and visibly confirmed that they are open. Then there's invalid, so something is wrong with the TCP setup. Then there's the situation related. This is the key one that we typically need, which tells us that this incoming message from the outside world is related to a traffic that has been sent from internally to the outside world. And there's also the situation new, basically case where first packets of a connection is seen for the first time, and basically that triggers the setup of a new state which waits now for incoming related messages. Okay, here we have an example how for this given setup, especially with the case of we want to access from internally any kind of website or network from outside, and incoming message should be checked that it's only allowed if it's a response to ongoing open transmissions. So what we do is also here first flush the forward table, then we define a default case, what should be done. So in default all packets should be dropped, and then we define exceptions. Basically everything that is invalid should be dropped. If we send a message from internally to the internal network to the outside network, then it should be accepted. Also our machines can always communicate to the outside. Now let's check for the returning response. So if the destination is our I think SMTP server, and it is coming, so eth0 is let's say out, and eth1 is in, so internal network. So if it comes from the outside to the internal network and it's TCP and it's destined to reach the corresponding mail server or local mail server, then the message should be accepted. And so this is basically to cover the case of our mail server. And now for all traffic that is related to web services and web servers, basically allowing. So here we have the allowance of sending out requests, and now the response come back. So the responses should be of the case related or established. It should come from outside to the inside, and it should address any kind of machine in our setup, so that we can have clearly the criteria by which we filter out messages. So everything related coming in, because it's a response to an open communication, should be accepted. New open communication should be accepted from inside to the outside, and everything that basically addresses only our mail server from the outside to our mail server is in this constrained way accepted, and everything else is dropped. Please look into it also in preparation for the lab exercise. So this is typically how to use it. Please also have a look at how the what other options IP table offers. So 2 slides more. So let's talk about these slides, and then we can wrap up. So the term related is a little bit unusual, because that means either it's new, but at the same time it is already known to be ongoing. So it is not established. Established is when we already set up the network. Basically, we sent a message out, and now the response come back. That is of the state established. But related is a little bit different. So this is this is basically new. So we have this is internal, this is out. We have sent a request. There has been the response. So this is established. But now some of the protocols, such as FTP, file transfer protocol, allow to create a new additional connection in TCP, which is not on the same port. So this is established and this is related, because it belongs per protocol to the first connection, but protocol wise it needs to have a new individual connection. So, and this is the term related. So FTP is a suitable example for that. Any kind of new information coming from the outside to the inside might typically, in the first case, would be dropped, but in this case, because it's related, if it's accepted, if it's related, you can still accept the very first message on this new channel, so-called. Although it's the first packet, just because you specified that you accept this kind of related traffic. So last slide for today. So stateful firewalls are very powerful. Please be aware of which messages can be addressed by stateful firewalls in contrast to non-stateful, so stateless firewalls, which think of every packet as its own individual, and stateful firewalls looks at also connections that are allowed to have. stateful firewalls are quite complex to go through all internal parameters, and it is time consuming and so on, resource consuming. In practice, stateful firewalls are often combined with network address translation. That will be the next topic, which we talk about in the next lecture. But we will see where the connection points with network address translation are. But still, in our exercise, we will have a look at IP tables as well. We will have a look at application layer gateways, especially SQUID, that we should get familiarized with. And now, having basically explored the option offered by firewalls, what security measures they bring. Basically, it's just simple filtering based on simple rules. So in actuality, everybody could read these rules and apply them for themselves, but it's basically put in this kind of context. The syntax is also not complicated, so we will explore it a little bit in the lab exercise. And firewalls, and especially stateful firewalls, help us to filter traffic for unwanted potential threats from the outside to the inside. Okay, so far for today. I would say thanks for your attention and see you then in the next lecture. Thanks. See you. Bye.